Hey guys, it's Barbie. Welcome to Some Not Church. I just have a story to tell you. This is in my book. I don't know what chapter it is, but I just want to actually tell the story today instead of read the story as I wrote it. 9 years ago, I was walking down a highway after I jumped out of a car. It was a thunderstorm, 9 o'clock, 9:30 at night, and pouring down rain. I guess I said that when I said I was in a thunderstorm. I don't know why, I just repeat myself. Anyway, so I get out of the car and I'm walking down this highway, and my life is just, everything is just falling apart, but really kind of falling together. So y'all know that it looks that way sometimes. And I walked a little bit and I just sat down. I was just done. I was so exhausted and so tired inside and outside. This was after my time at hospice, and I'd done all these funerals. This was after the funeral of a baby in January. This is that just a couple months later. And I was filled with grief, among many other things. So as I walked down that highway and I sat down and I sat on the side of the highway and I cried, and I watched cars going past me, and I realized that nobody knew I was there. Nobody knew I was sitting on the side of State Highway 62. Nobody was going to come along and rescue me. I waited for the heavens to split open and Jesus to just come down and freaking take me like I'd ask him to. Didn't happen. Instead, somehow, from inside, I guess, the strength came, and I stood and I began to walk down that highway, and for the first time in my life, I walked for help. I was taught my entire life to pull myself up by the bootstraps and move on. There's times when you can't, and sometimes your bootstraps get broken. My bootstraps were broken during this time. I walked down that highway and I turned my blinker on. Anyway, I turned on a 6 Mile, I guess it is. And as I was walking down this road to my new friend, Tammy Sawyer's house, sobbing, trying to keep my mental health together, feeling so alone in the universe and asking God where he was and, why all this had to happen. And as I walked and I cried and I felt alone, I heard a noise in the dark, and it was a horse. And this horse came up. I could hear it. It came up to the fence near the road where I walked. And as I walked down that road and I cried, that horse in his gentle spirit, he walked down that fence row with me. That whole fence row. And I felt this overwhelming peace. And I felt an overwhelming presence of the Holy Spirit. And I felt an overwhelming strength to finish that walk to that door. I walked through a garage and I knocked on her garage door, and as I said, the first time that I remember in my ever life, I asked somebody for help. I told somebody the truth about what was happening in my dysfunctional life. I reached out. We're not taught that. We're taught to keep it to ourselves, and as society, we're taught to turn our heads. Thank God that Tammy Sawyer didn't turn her head when I knocked on her door in 2011 in the spring. I told her the story about the horse and how he'd calmed me. Months later, I'm rushing her to the hospital as her sister's being life flighted. We're halfway there when we find out that her sister's crossed on over. We go ahead and go on to St. Francis. A couple days later, I'm working and I feel led to go get her sister's little girl a sketch pad at Hobby Lobby. I told her, I hope this won't offend anybody. I don't even know her or anything, but I hope this is okay. I just felt led to get this for Nikki. And Tammy said she loves to draw. I had no idea. So sometime, this is all before the funeral, Nikki's there at Tammy's house drawing at the counter, and Tammy and I go outside and we're talking, and we come back in, and on the very first page of that little girl's sketch pad is that horse. It says, the horse next to my Aunt Tammy's. That same horse that had walked down a fence row with me months and months before in the dark. When Tammy and I saw that little girl's sketch pad, we knew that the same power and presence and peace and strength that overtook me that night would overtake this 9-year-old little girl sitting at a sketch pad. March 3rd, 2012, on my son's birthday, I was at a speech and debate competition, and I went and got my own sketch pad, and I did my very first sketch, and I began to sketch and paint my way out of the prison of me. When you grow up in abuse and you perpetuate abuse and it's your way of life, there's so many things that are done that have to be undone. Art and creativity has been a great escape and a great therapeutic tool for me. Brings me a lot of that peace. Wherever you're at today. If you're sitting on the side of a highway in a dark rainstorm, and I know a family and a very close dear friend right now, it's a rainstorm in their life. Pray and ask for the strength to stand up. Some of us just need to know that we need to be that person that has the open door. So if those people that are lost in the storm and they knock on our door and they ask us for help, that we don't turn them away. Because someone helped me. See, I loved helping other people. I loved being a minister. I loved living in Nevada and owning I loved it, hated it. It was the worst of times and it was the best of times. But I owned a Christian child care center, and on Sundays I went into a juvenile detention center. And I preached to those kids locked up. I took 2 different families into my home and I helped them get on their feet. I took an infant into my home and I helped her. I used to pick up women walking down the side of the highways. My first 2 books are filled with different stories of these women that I just kept coming across and picking them up on the side of the highway. It felt very holy and good and right to preach and to help and to pick up those women. It's easier to be a giver than it is to be a receiver. Note that a receiver is different than a taker. Thank you, Holy Spirit. See, it takes humility to receive. It takes humility to ask for help. It takes humility to tell your story. It takes humility to knock on somebody's door and ask for help like that. It takes humility to open that door and provide help. Wherever you're at today in your journey, I pray you get up. I pray you know that the Holy Spirit will come alongside you and walk beside you in any and every circumstance of your life as He is in you and dwells within you. God's not billions of miles away. He dwells in us through His Spirit. Last summer I rode on this horse over here. I rode in a rodeo the day that I spoke at the Pride picnic at Honor Heights. I went and rode my first rodeo. I'm still learning how to ride a horse. It was a big act for me. Everything's a big act for me. Y'all know me. You know how I am. Anyway, no, it was a big act of courage because I was scared to death. Because I don't know anything about horses. I like to be good at what I'm doing. I don't like to look like a fool. I don't like to start new jobs. And I've had to do that over and over and over. I like to look cool. I like to be cool. I like to be brilliant. I like to be the smartest at what I do. Maybe that's why I've had to start over and over again. Be humble. Be strong. Be gentle. Be like a horse. God bless you guys. Till the next episode of Horse Sense.